Hello my friends. In another video I talk about getting stuck in life-sucking meetings. What happens when you're stuck in a room with a bunch of other people and the meeting goes on and on and on and there doesn't seem to be any point to it. And what a colossal waste of time it could be. And unfortunately it's a phenomenon that's very common, especially in our software development industry. There's an old joke that says we will continue to meet on an around-the-clock basis until we figure out why productivity is so bad. Which is a kind of a variation on the old joke that floggings will continue until morale improves. Having meetings upon meetings upon meetings is what is affecting productivity. And oftentimes people have meetings because it feels like they're doing something, when in fact all that's happening is they're wasting time. So it's important to understand when meetings are warranted and when meetings are a waste of time, and to be able to examine the situation you're in and make decisions about whether you belong there or not. My name is Fred Fowler. I'm a third-level Professional Scrum Master, a PSM 3, certified by Scrum.org, and I've been doing Scrum for almost 20 years. And I've been a Scrum Master and Agile Coach for organizations big and small. I've been everything from a coding developer myself to the Vice President of Information Technology for a big company. And so I've got lots and lots of experience with the process of creating software, working with teams, and dealing with situations like this. And in terms of meetings, well, I did a whole video on life-sucking meetings. And I described the problem in that video. Now my purpose this time is to talk about how to recognize the situations and what to do about them when they occur, because they're the bane of everybody's existence. Now, let's understand why people call meetings and what meetings are useful for and what they're not useful for. I've been in lots of situations where management has called for status meetings, update meetings, meetings about where we look, where things stand. And often they ask everybody they can think of to be part of the meeting. There was actually a customer I worked for that had what they called their a meeting of the what do they call it, the project management offices, the PMO. And so they got the coordinators of all the different projects together into the same room once a week, and then for 2 hours they went over all of the projects that each of those project managers was working on. The PMO basically was using that as a way to get the status of all the different projects. And that was a very frustrating, useless couple of hours every week, because the people who were involved in their individual projects, they had things to talk about, but they didn't need to listen to the projects of everybody else. And it turned out to be very boring. Now, that's a good example of why not to have a meeting. Every time you hear somebody talk about a status meeting, well, status meetings are pretty much a waste of time, because all they're doing is communicating information. And there's a much better way to communicate information like that, status information. It isn't by getting people into a room and talking about it. It's by using something called an information radiator. Now, what's an information radiator? Well, it's a kind of a public document that can get published that contains the status of whatever you're talking about. A long time ago, I was the Scrum Master of a team that was partially onshore and partially offshore. And every morning I would get all these calls from all of these different parts of the company wanting to know what my offshore people had done. They wanted to know the status of the offshore work. And after a week or two of answering the same question over and over over the telephone, what I did was I used a tool called Confluence, which is a way of kind of making a website that's easy to update. And I just wrote a web page with all the status information each morning. And when somebody called, I said, look at the web page. All of a sudden, all the calls went away, and people got the information they were looking for using this information radiator. I didn't have to explain things again and again over the phone. I just put it all up on a website and let people see it for themselves. So the use of an information radiator is much better than trying to have a meeting to describe the status of things. And by the way, Scrum has several information radiators built into it. One of them is the product backlog, which is a document that should be available to anybody who's interested. And it shows not just what work is going on now, but what has happened in the past, what the future plan for the product is. And with a little bit of extrapolation, it's possible to get an idea, a forecast for the timing of the different parts of the product backlog when they will come into use. So the product backlog is a good information radiator which answers lots of questions about what's the status and the plan for the product. No need to have a meeting to discuss it. Now, another important information radiator is the sprint backlog. That's the plan that the developers come up with in order to organize the work they do each sprint. And a good sprint backlog shows the different tasks that need to be done and whether they are underway or are to do or completed. That's the typical Kanban board that we're all familiar with, the 3-column board that has a to-do column and a in-progress column and a done column. The 3 different statuses of different tasks. And by just looking at that Kanban board, looking at that sprint backlog, it's possible for anybody to see what the status of the work is. So use information radiators for status. Every time somebody wants to have a status meeting, that's definitely a suspect meeting. Do we really need to have a meeting about this? If it's just about status, there's a better way to provide that information. So by getting rid of status meetings and things like that, you eliminate quite a number of useless life-sucking meetings. Just make the information available through information radiators, and then all of a sudden you have more time to actually generate results, generate productivity results. Now, you can't do away with meetings altogether. Meetings are vitally important in certain circumstances. And it's very important to understand when a meeting is called for and when basically nothing else will do except to have a meeting. And there are those situations. And in the Scrum framework, there are several meetings. There are 4 real meetings, 5 if you call the sprint itself a meeting. But the thing to remember about all of these in Scrum is that every meeting has a purpose. It has a goal. And what are those goals? Those goals usually are about decisions. Actually, they're almost always about decisions. You get people together into a meeting to discuss something and make a decision that everybody has some input in, and therefore everybody buys into in the end. Just meetings are for making decisions. And unless you're making a decision, you don't belong in the meeting. By the way, one of the lean principles, which I think I mentioned earlier, is that if you're in a meeting and you find that there's no value that you're contributing and there's nothing that's of value being given to you, get out of it. You don't belong there. And usually the way you get value or contribute value in a meeting is by helping to make some decision about something. So every meeting should have a goal. You should have a decision that is to be made by the group of people. In the sprint planning meeting, the decision is, what are we going to try to get accomplished in the next 2 weeks, the next sprint? And the people who make that decision are the ones who are going to be involved and have a stake in the outcome. The product owners needs to make sure that what the scope of the sprint is something that's worthwhile, that's worth paying for. And the developers need to make sure that the scope of the sprint is something that is achievable, that they can do. So the product owner describes what's desirable, the developers describe what is feasible, and so the intersection of that, the Venn diagram of that, if you will, is what's practical, and that's a decision that is made about the sprint planning meeting. Okay. Likewise, the daily scrum, it's a meeting to make a decision. What's the decision? The decision is, are we on track? Do we need to adjust our plan in order to meet the commitment that we made during the sprint planning meeting? You know, and on like that. The sprint review, its decision is, we now understand what the product does now after all the work's been done. What should it do next? What are the next priorities that we have discovered and learned about this? So that's the decision that's made during the sprint review. And in the retrospective, the decision is, we're working together in this way. What do we need to do differently in order to work together better? What decision do we have to make about the way we work together in order to get better results? So the point is that every meeting, every justifiable meeting, every justifiable use of everybody's time and effort needs to be stated in terms of what decision is going to be made and how important that decision is. And if you're going to have a status meeting where no decision is made at all, that's a complete waste of time. The only reason to have a meeting is to get a group of people together, discuss different options, and come to a conclusion that everybody has some say in and therefore everybody is bought into. So anyway, that's the important thing to understand about meetings. Status meetings are silly. You should use information radiators instead. If you want to have a decision made, that's an appropriate time to invite people to a meeting, everybody involved who is affected by that decision, so that they can then have some input as to whether it's appropriate to make the decision or not. So that's the end of that story. Once again, my name is Fred Fowler. I'm a third-level professional Scrum Master at PSM 3, done by Scrum.org. I've been doing Scrum for many, many years. I've taught a lot of people how to be Scrum Masters. I've more than 300 people altogether. I've written several books. There are a couple of books on Amazon, and then I've got a bunch of, I did 10 audiobooks lately about different aspects of Scrum. And I have a Patreon group, www.patreon.com/Silicon Valley Scrum, where we're building a community of excellence around the Scrum framework. So I invite you to come join us. So anyway, thanks again for your time. Thanks for watching. If you like the video, please give it a like. Please go ahead and click the bell notification for new videos. Subscribe. And again, thanks very much for your attention. And thanks for coming with me on our exploration of Scrum in the real world. Best regards.